Okay, we'll get started here. Hello and welcome again. I'm Marletha Williams, the Supply Diversity Program Manager for the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, located in Washington, D.C., and your moderator today. Again, thank you for joining us. As you know, since COVID-19, we have been unable to participate in vendor outreach fairs in person. So we decided to host a series of webinars, summer series, to bring you information and resources that you could use to help you navigate during these unprecedented times. So these webinars will be 1-hour webinars. We actually hosted our first webinar a couple of weeks ago with the SBA. Some of you may have joined us during that time, navigating the Paycheck Protection Loan Program. So today we have tips on winning contracts. So again, thank you for joining us. And we want this to be an interactive webinar. We're going to have a few polling questions. We want you to ask us questions because we want you to get the answers that you need regarding navigating our acquisition process. Is there any questions you may have regarding procurement, supplier diversity, and things of that nature? So also joining me today is Kimberly Briggs. Kim is our Assistant Director of Procurement and Operations and Policy. And I also have Danielle Calderon with us. She's a Senior Procurement Policy and Compliance Specialist. Kimberly?
I did just want to welcome you, and for those that are joining us for the second webinar, welcome. If this is your first webinar in our summer series, welcome. I'm very pleased that you all are taking the time out of your busy day to participate in this event. We are definitely saddened we're not able to see you in person because of the coronavirus. We are definitely looking forward to hosting another external event in the not too distant future. So bear with us today. We will try to get to all of your questions. I'll be scrolling through. I've already seen some familiar names there. And I just hope you enjoy the webinar. We do have lots of great information for you today.
So as I mentioned earlier, we are not hosting our vendor fair this year. So actually, how many of you have participated? We're actually going to do a polling question. How many of you have participated in our vendor outreach fairs before? So we'll start with the polling question. And while we gather that information, actually, before Danielle gets started, I will actually give you an overview, just a quick overview of the Federal Reserve System. I'm going to share my screen with you guys to talk a little bit about who we are and what it is we do. So, who we are. We are the Central Bank of the United States. We are the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve has 5 key functions in the public interest, and it is to promote a healthy U.S. economy and also to promote the financial stability of the United States. The Federal Reserve System has 3 key entities: the Board of Governors, which is an independent federal agency, as I mentioned, located in Washington, D.C. We have 12 reserve banks. The reserve banks are the operating arms of the Federal Reserve System, and they operate independently with supervision, and they are located throughout the United States. And then we have the Federal Open Market Committee. The Federal Open Market Committee consists of 7 members from the Board of Governors, 5 members from the reserve banks. Our chairman, Jerome Powell, is the chair of the FOMC committee, and they are responsible for developing monetary policy. So that's a quick overview of what makes up the Federal Reserve System. So, Kimberly, do we have our polling results yet from the vendor fair?
We do. The poll is in, and it looks like about 54% of us on the call today have not attended one of our previous events before.
Wow. Okay. Well, again, welcome. Welcome to our outreach. As Kim mentioned, we miss you guys. You know, We love seeing you guys in person, to meet with you, to meet our program managers and things of that nature. So hopefully from this webinar today, we want it to be interactive. So please jump in, ask questions throughout. But before I bring Danielle on, I want to share with you, can you guys still see my screen here? I want to share with you the Federal Reserve System procurement structure. So I'm going to proceed. I take that you can see my screen here, correct, Kim? Okay. So, when we look at the Federal Reserve System, the procurement structure, the Board of Governors, and that's us in Washington, D.C., our procurement is centralized. We buy everything for the Federal Reserve Board. Our reserve banks are decentralized. They buy individually, each reserve bank buy their own procurement. They procure their own goods and services. When you look at the reserve banks, also within our Richmond, the Reserve Bank of Richmond, you have an opportunity to do business with our National Procurement Office, as well as the Federal Reserve Information Technology Group as well. So when you look at the entire system, you have an opportunity to do business with at least 15 entities of the Federal Reserve System. So this map shows you how we are located in regions. As I mentioned, we have 12 reserve banks. As you can see, you have San Francisco, they're number 12, and you can look over the reserve banks and see where the different regions are. So I would like to tell you, so if any of you are interested in doing business with any of the reserve banks, we have my colleagues, the supply diversity managers, contact information located on the board's website, or you can reach out to me directly, email me. I'll be more than happy to do a virtual introduction. And hopefully, if we have some time at the end, I want to share with you, Dallas has some upcoming contracting opportunities that they wanted me to share with you as well today. So most of you have my contact information, but at this time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and bring Danielle on so she can share with you tips on how to win contracts with the board. But before we get into that, we have a couple of more polling questions. We want to know how many of you currently have contracts with the Federal Reserve Banks, and how many of you may have contracts with the Federal Reserve Board. So as Danielle come on, if you can answer those polling questions for us, and we will get the results back to you. So as I mentioned, we want you to have the information you need to navigate our acquisition process. We are committed to providing you the information to help you be successful. And what we will ask of you today is commit to yourself to take the information that we're providing you to help you navigate the acquisition process within the Federal Reserve Board, so that you too can be one of our, be a contract winner with the Federal Reserve Board. Danielle?
Thank you. Thank you, Marlita, so much for that wonderful introduction. And thank you all for joining us here this afternoon. So to begin, I wanted to just give a general overview of the board's primary methods of acquisition. So we will typically acquire our goods and our non-hourly price services through federal and government-wide contracts or schedules. So you'll all be familiar with GSA, SOUP schedule, that sort of thing. And we may also utilize formal bidding and negotiated procurements, and that will typically result in us releasing a request for quote or RFQ, or a solicitation offer and award, or an SOA. Now, before I go into, because I do want to highlight some areas of the RFQs and the SOAs so that we can get you to an award, I do want to take a brief moment, because some may be wondering, am I able just to go out on FedBizOpps and potentially see an RFQ or a solicitation posted by the board? So I will say, unlike the other federal agencies, we really do not utilize FedBizOpps to advertise our RFQs or our solicitations. Every once in a while, you may see something posted there by us, but for the most part, we will build our own bidders list, and we want to ensure that you register with us. So if you haven't been to our vendor fairs before, that's always our big line. Make sure you register, make sure you get into our database. So that website that Marlita just showed on the previous slide gave our web address, but we will also provide that again in the end, and that will have a portal to make sure you're registered with us. And we do use that to that database in order to build our bidders list, and we will leverage that. Additionally, we're hoping in the next month or so to have our forecast of some upcoming efforts for, I believe it's going to be 2021 and 2022, if that's correct, Marlisa. And they will, okay, great. And they will have some points of contact associated with them. So really throughout the process, we always want to make sure that you're engaged with us. And a big piece of that will be if you see something on there that sparks your interest, you think you'd be able to provide a quote or a proposal for, please make sure you take a peek at that forecast and reach out to that contract specialist. Sometimes it's a contracting officer that's listed there. We welcome it and we want you to engage with us, especially earlier on in the process, the better. And again, we'll provide that website to you at the end so that you're able to copy that and get that down. Okay. So now I'm going to move into some highlights of our request for quote. And our requests for quotes are going to be utilized for our less complex acquisition of goods or services. So typically an RFQ will maybe be a page or two, which would result in a more simplified quote or proposal being provided back to us. RFQs will include the description of the good or service that we're looking to buy, and that will include any applicable quantities or SKU numbers. It will also include our delivery requirements, any of our submission instructions, and any other additional terms and conditions as applicable. And I would say that even though RFQs are for some more simplified acquisitions, you may be looking at something and say, you know, I'm very familiar, I have experience with that product, something doesn't really look right with the SKU number that's been provided, please do not hesitate to ask. We'll always include a contracting officer or contract specialist as part of that RFQ who you can reach out to. So I'm going to take a brief pause there before I go into exploring the SOA and not have too much on the RFQs because they are pretty simple in nature, and just see if we have anything. Okay. I don't believe so. So we'll get into now our solicitations, offer, and awards. So for any of you that are familiar with doing business with other federal agencies, our SOAs are similar to what another federal agency would call a request for proposal. And those are going to be for our more complex acquisitions of goods and services. So as I said previously, for our RFQs, they're typically only about a page or two long. The SOA minimally, with not a very involved statement of work, will be 85 pages. So it will require a more thorough response or proposal back to us. Our SOAs are divided up alphabetically by sections. So we have sections A through M. And they will have similarities to the FAR, the uniform contract format, if you are familiar with that. And those sections are typically going to be informational sections. It will also include our terms and conditions, our requirements and our specifications, as well as our submission instructions and evaluation procedures. Okay. So I just want to highlight certain of those sections that I just briefly talked about for the SOA, but I do want to make a really key point here. And that being that even though I'm highlighting certain sections of the SOA, it's not to say that other areas of the SOA aren't important. Each and every section of the SOA is meant to complement the next, and it's there in order for you to provide back to us a full proposal. So just because I'm sitting here today and we're running through maybe sections A and B, but we're not going through section D and E, please don't take it as, well, Danielle, I don't have to pay attention to the rest of those sections. Not at all. We just wanted to really highlight some areas for you today to drive home some key areas. But again, really ensure that if you are responding to a solicitation, you are looking at it in full and in whole. Okay. So to start, I just wanted to quickly cover the SOA cover page. So you might quickly look at that and say, oh, it looks like it's just a signed letter from the contracting officer or the contract specialist. It actually does have some general information regarding the solicitation there. And it will also specify important dates related to the deadline for submission of questions and your proposal receipt deadline. And it's very clear and it's highlighted for you right on that page. So great, easy, quick page for information about that solicitation. If there's a pre-proposal conference, that date will also be provided on that cover page as well. Our section B is our cost price proposal form. And for our solicitations, we will provide a cost price proposal form, or essentially it's going to be an Excel table to you in order to complete. So you really want to ensure that you're providing all of the cost and price information that we're requesting. So that includes labor rates, indirect rates, if we're looking for equipment pricing, travel costs, whatever it may be. And if you're making any assumptions with that cost or price information, please provide narrative, which will accompany that cost or price table explaining the assumptions that you made. Because we might be looking for travel costs, but based on the requirements in the SOW, you may have an idea of the length of a trip or how many trips. And if we're looking at what you proposed and we're not quite sure, well, we thought it was going to be 2, but it looks like the travel is a little bit different from what we had expected, having that additional narrative in there will help give some background and explain to us the travel costs that you're proposing and putting forth. Section C is our statement of work. So obviously proposals must clearly demonstrate the ability to perform to the statement of work. It's going to provide your scope of work, your place of performance, and of course, any project meetings. The next area I wanted to touch on is the Section G inquiries. So just to, again, reiterate, we want to make sure that you are engaged throughout this process. So Section G inquiries, it outlines the deadlines for question submittal, that all questions must be submitted in writing, and again, the opportunity for you to ask if something is unclear or you have a question regarding any of our requirements. And just to be aware, we will ensure that for any of the questions that are submitted, we will remove any vendor-specific or identifying information. So you don't need to be concerned that you might be asking something, but it may reveal potentially something about you or your company. We'll make sure to remove that information before sharing amongst all the interested parties. Section H is our key personnel section. It's going to identify the minimum requirements for personnel proposed in those key roles or positions, and also provide the process for substituting any of those key personnel. And something important to keep in mind here is that in the first 90 days, no substitutions will be approved unless, of course, an emergency situation emerges. And just also bear in mind that in the event of a substitution by you, the qualifications of the person substituting that key personnel listed in that role must be equal to or higher than the individual that's being replaced. Okay, going into Section I. So this outlines our evaluation and our award process. So it will describe our process as to how the proposal will be evaluated. And it's going to outline all of your evaluation factors, such as technical, past performance, and price. It's also going to give some details related to factors that we utilize in order to determine whether an offer is responsible, such as including financial statements as part of the proposal, confirmations related to certain business licenses you may have, or any outstanding taxes may not have been paid or linger, or legal issues. Because part of the evaluation process will be finding the offeror to be responsible, and you must be found to be responsible in order to be eligible for award. Section J is our contract administration section. And this identifies contract management. We also have the listing of contract management personnel, so those that will be in charge of administering the contract through its life. And part of that will be identifying a very important person, your contracting officer's representative, and their role and responsibility. Okay. The next section is Section L that I want to take a moment to highlight, and those are our general instructions and information section. So this will include terms and conditions related to the proposal development, your submission and award, and covers indemnification, our security requirements, etc. Very and probably key to this section is it will provide as well your proposal submission instructions, who you're sending your proposal to, how to send the proposal, and when the proposal is due. And it will outline the volumes that will be submitted and what must be included in each of those volumes. And typically we will have 4 volumes as part of our proposals. Volume 1 typically being the offer, so it will include things such as Section K, our reps and certs, as well as some of those financial information that we had talked about. Volume 2 will typically be our technical volume, Volume 3 being our past performance volume, and Volume 4 being our cost or price volume. And we are closing in on the end here of the SOA, and that being Section M, which is the general contract provisions. And these are provisions that are standard in all of our board contracts. And I do have a note here at the bottom. I know it's all the way at the bottom, but it is an important note to make that if you are taking exceptions to any of the terms and conditions in the SOA, you must explicitly state what that exception is, and you must also provide a description or explain why that exception is being taken. We've obviously put certain terms and conditions into our solicitations for a reason, so it's very important that we know exactly what exception you're taking and why that exception is being taken, so we can have a better understanding as to, is it something that we could potentially work with you on, or would it be something that would be very difficult for us to work around? Okay. So again, just wanted to make sure that website was provided up for everybody.
Okay, it looks like we may have lost Danielle. Okay, guys, do we have any questions? I know Danielle actually highlighted some key sections in our solicitation offer and award. Basically, I just want to reiterate, we want you to read the entire solicitation. We want you to engage and collaborate with us early on in the process. Most of you have my contact information. We just put it up on the screen. I will tell you that we are definitely open for business at the Federal Reserve Board. Our contracting officers, our contract specialists, they're available for you to ask questions, to talk about a particular solicitation that you may be interested in. Once you get a copy of the forecast, we want you to engage with us. We want you to collaborate with us. We want to answer your questions. So, Kim, would you like to add additional comments? And guys, we are open for questions, so please submit your questions so we can answer those for you.
Yes, so there are questions in, and I've been trying to answer a few of them in real time, but there may be a few worth just sharing here right now, and in the event others aren't able to see. So one of the questions had to do with our acquisition process with regards to simple data licensing contracts. I tried to put a very brief answer here, but the fact is it's probably a much longer answer. So if the data licensing contracts are primarily for our economics divisions in our research and statistics areas, our acquisition policy has a special clause that allows us to procure those non-competitively. But it has to meet certain criteria, such as meeting the specific business need or provides a unique data set and things of that nature to be able to use that clause. If it's outside of any of those parameters, we would use a normal competitive acquisition method, which would require us to provide the requirements and have folks respond to that. There's a comment here where, yes, we are very different from other federal agencies, and our solicitations are by invitation only. I can assure folks on the call that we do use the database, and a couple of the firms here, I have confirmed that you are listed in our database, and so that is one of the means of pulling together our bidders list. And we welcome you to reach out to us further to find out, as the comment here, yeah, don't call us, we'll call you. That's not quite it, but we definitely are open for business and would love to learn a little bit more about your firm. And then, yes, we absolutely work directly with small businesses, though we do also encourage subcontracting opportunities. Sometimes building your past performance with a government agency can best be done via a subcontracting opportunity, but we do work directly with small businesses as well. Quite a large percentage of our work does go to small businesses. I'm going to pause there and let Danielle continue, and I'll start, when we have another break, perhaps address some of these others, and I'll also try to continue to reply to them in real time. They're coming in fast and furious, I have to say.
So, Kim, one of the things, excuse me, Danielle, one of the things, guys, we will get the questions answered, and we'll submit the questions and answers to you after the event. So stay tuned. We will email you a copy of all the questions and all the answers. So Kim may not be able to address all of them right now, but you will get answers to all of your questions. And actually, this is being recorded, so we'll probably put this out on our YouTube channel or the board's external webpage as well.
Oh, well, if that's the case, there are a couple of other questions over here on the side that I can absolutely go through. Someone wrote, is there an effort, like we've been seeing with other entities, to use small minority and women-owned firms? And my answer to that is absolutely. We do have a very robust supplier diversity program. We've had our supplier diversity program in place prior to the enactment of the Dodd-Frank Act. And Dodd-Frank came along, and that helped us kind of focus some of our strategies on women and minority-owned firms. But we are just as eager to engage with small, minority-owned, any of the diverse firms in the business population. We will make this presentation available, as Marletha just mentioned. That was a question here. Someone wants to know how they can do business with the board, and there are several ways to do that. You've got a nice panel here of folks that would be able to help you navigate that. Marletha Williams is our primary point of contact as our Supplier Diversity Program Manager. If you haven't, and I have not had a moment to check to see if your firm is actually mentioned here, the person that said they're an MBE certified company based out of Rockville, if you populate your company name, I'll double check to see if you're listed in our database. But if you're not already in our database, we do encourage you to register your firm there, and that is also available on the board's website under About the Fed and Doing Business with the Board. So that is definitely a step. And reaching out via email to Marletha with more of an introduction or a more personal introduction with your capabilities, and then she can potentially match you with internal clients. She's well aware of our forecast. She sits in the procurement office, so she has she is well nested within the acquisition organization at the board, and usually has her ear to the ground for all opportunities that are available. Scrolling through here.
So
Danielle, if you, oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was going to say there's someone that wants to have you show the website information again. If you could pop that slide up so folks can capture that information. Okay, there's the contact information. And Marletha, you were going to say something before I continue with the questions?
Yes, I was just going to jump in to let people know that, as Kim mentioned, we want you to engage with us. As a matter of fact, our upcoming webinars are going to be Meet the Program Managers. So not only do you have an opportunity to collaborate with me, the contracting staff, we allow you to actually talk with our program managers. So our next two webinars will be Meet the Program Managers. I can tell you the next webinar is August the 25th. We will have the program managers from our currency education program, and they are actually seeking contractors to do a web application and AWS, I believe, iCloud infrastructure. These contracts will be awarded by December 31st. One of the things that I don't think we've mentioned, we are not on a fiscal year. We are on a calendar year. So we are about to gear up and go in our busy season, probably September through December. We have all hands on deck, and we are awarding contracts daily, really until about, Kim, January. We like to say we have everything awarded by December 31st. So now is the time to collaborate with us. Again, like I said, August 25th, you'll meet the program managers from the currency education program. And I want to say the next two webinars, the three webinars, will be meeting the program managers. So Kim, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yes, the next question I actually would love for Danielle to address, because it is part of our solicitation process. And this person would like you to talk a little bit more about, I guess, the overall process, but specifically, like, what is a typical evaluation period? And I'm assuming for this question, the person wants to know the proposal evaluation period.
Sure. So we'll typically ask for proposals to be valid for minimally 60 days. We try to work through an evaluation in a series of potentially about a month, 30 days, give or take, potentially a little bit. It could be a little bit more, it may be a little bit less. And then we'll work to award from there. So that's why we normally ask for that validity period to be for about 60 days so we can work through that evaluation, work through if we have a period where we're providing or going out and having any discussions with offerers, we have the opportunity to do that and then move to award. So that, to me, is a typical frame in which, you know, we'll wrap up our evaluation. I will say, though, it does depend. It will depend on the effort. Sometimes it depends on our evaluation teams. We will make sure that everyone has everything scheduled and is ready to go and kind of get through those evaluations as quickly as we can so that we can get back out to all of you with any questions or if it's discussions that we may have so we can get to award. But I would say, and can correct me if I'm wrong here, in about give or take 30 days, about 4 weeks, we'll try to be through the evaluation portion of most of our solicitations.
That sounds about right. Another question, Marlita already answered the fiscal year. I'm getting a bit of an echo. Thank you, panelists. Will we release the current forecast to participants on the call? We used to have our forecast published, and our plans are to publish them again, publish the forecast again. We realized we needed to do a little tweaking to it. It had way too much information for items that may not have been an actual opportunity for vendors, and we wanted to make sure that only true opportunities were presented there. There are some opportunities coming up, and I'm sure Marlita will be able to pull something together. She's talked about just a couple very recently, and there will be a few coming up that she'll be able to either speak to today or get something up on the website very soon. We have our own, the question is, do you utilize SBA 8A set-asides? And the board has its own set-aside program as part of its acquisition policy, and that is a set-aside for all what we call covered companies, and that would be any small, minority, woman-owned, service-disabled, veteran-owned, and HubZone firm. And so that's, our acquisition policy is also available on our public website for folks to take a look at and reference if you need any clarity there, as is the supplier diversity policy, and the set-aside policy is also there. We utilize any GSA schedule that's available if it does include items that the board wants to acquire. In fact, our acquisition procedures require that our teams use GSA as a means to do their market research, and if it's readily available on GSA at a reasonable price for what I'll say commercial off-the-shelf products, we can go directly to those schedule providers. If it's services, things get a little more complicated, but for the most part, we absolutely do utilize GSA schedules. And that often prompts a second question, which is, do I have to have a GSA schedule to do business with the board? And the answer to that is no, you do not have to have a GSA schedule to do business with us. Another great question for the group, and I am going to have to get some help here. There's a lot of questions. And I did answer this one in the chat box here, but the question is there a list of requirements that vendors need to qualify online? And the answer to that is no. Typically, our solicitation or RFQ process, if there are minimum requirements that a vendor must meet, those will be articulated in that solicitation document. So for example, the SOA process that Danielle discussed a few moments ago will have clear qualifications for that vendor. And we don't pre-vet all vendors ahead of time because honestly, each of the requirements is very unique. Whereas one requirement may be so complex that we may need a firm that has 10 years of experience specifically doing that, whereas other things may be less complex, which we would not require as many years of experience in that space. And so that's why we tend to do it that way. We don't have pre-vetting. We just encourage you to register, be as specific as you can about what your primary NAICS codes are, and any other detailed information that would help the contracts team be able to determine almost at a glance where your sweet spot is, and that way you can get included on the bidders list. I'm scrolling through. And this is a question, Danielle and Marletha, maybe you can see what, for the opportunities we have out there, what were the business needs were most prominent? So are we seeing that we have more of a need in the IT space or HR, technology? Are we buying more equipment and licenses? Does anyone have an?
Yes. So Kim, I think what I want to do right now, I can share. I know that we have a lot of acquisitions coming up in the IT space, but I want to share Dallas. The Reserve Bank of Dallas sent their forecast over, and just give me a minute. I'll present some of the things at Dallas. Caitlin is the supply diversity manager there. I can provide you guys with her contact information, but I'm going to share with you what Dallas has. Is it showing now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So if you look at Dallas, they have items in the real estate area, and I can send this, guys, at the end as well when we send the question and answers. They need consulting services, executive coaching. And typically what I like to tell people, if one of the reserve banks have a need, most of the reserve banks will have the same need. They need a museum maintenance and repair, right in the history of the bank. As you can see, they have information technology opportunities as well, law enforcement, dry cleaning, drug screening. So that's just to name a few of some of the things that that Dallas needs. So I do know what we're doing at the board. We are finalizing the forecast for 2021 and 2022. Hopefully we will have that available for you on our website within the next, within the next month or so. So I can tell you that, as Danielle mentioned, when we purchase a lot of our hardware, we will go to to a federal schedule. But oftentimes, just keep in touch with us. As Kim say, go to our website, put your information in, because our database is our primary source to do market research. We actually gather information from our database to do our market research. And what we can also do, if you email me, I can always share your capability statements. So we have different means of how we communicate and engage with our vendors. But yeah, definitely we're coming up to the business season. And believe it or not, requisitions come in every day. If they come in so fast, it's going to be hard, really, really hard for me to keep up with all the requisitions that are coming in. But do reach out to me so that I can share your information to the contracting officers who are procuring those goods and services.
There's another question for the common good, and I have been, while Danielle and Marletha were speaking, trying to, again, answer others. But there's one I think is worth kind of addressing here, and of course I've lost it, so I'm going to kind of just paraphrase the question, which was, if I win a board contract but I'm not able to fulfill it, can I then contract that work out to someone else? And so the answer really is it's going to depend on the terms and conditions within your specific contract. We don't want anyone to get a contract that they're not able to fulfill. So there are going to be quite a few steps that we'll want you to follow if you do find yourself into that situation. Number one, of course, is reach out to both your contracting officer's representative and your contract specialist and discuss the specific situation that transpired that has now led you to not be able to fulfill that contract. It's a very unfortunate situation. We don't want to see any of our suppliers in that. And we will work with you to try and come up with a solution that is mutually beneficial for us. So I can't give a specific answer. It's really going to be case specific on the requirement that needs to be fulfilled, the schedule for that project, whether we will have the time to be able to allow you to cure the fact that you aren't able to fulfill. So the best advice is if you're not 100% positive you'll be able to fulfill the contract, please do not provide a proposal. If you do still submit a proposal, make sure you have made very clear that maybe your offer is contingent on certain things happening either by a specific date or certain exceptions must be met. Just be very clear in your proposal because we don't want anyone to receive a contract award and then not be able to fulfill the requirements under that contract. Another question is, do we have secret personnel clearances? Are those required? The very generic answer to that is going to be no, but there are going to be some circumstances in which we may require some level of clearance depending on the work. If folks have to come on site, there are background check requirements to allow you into our facilities, and depending on the level of access to our information, you may have to go through even more, but it's not a security clearance, it's more of a background check in most instances. And I know I've jumped all over the place. If folks are able to hang on to the line when we are ready to wrap, I can certainly spend more time going through. We have questions. How can I be an information technology staff augmentation vendor? This is an unfortunate timing situation here because I do believe that solicitation has been let. It is on the street now. If you reach out privately to Marletha or I, we could probably give you more detailed information about that, but I do think that's the most up-to-date information. So,
Kim, that is correct. Solicitation is already on the street.
Okay. The question on 10 years, I was using that as an example. Not sure if you've received a solicitation that had that as a requirement. It really was an example, and it's going to be case specific depending on the requirement for how much experience we would expect firms to have. So if it sounded like I said it's always going to be 10 years, that is not the case. The website where we ask you to register, the question is there a portal for uploading our vendor capability statement? You are able to cut and paste capability information into the registration information. Additionally, if that does not work out for you, the email addresses of procurement staff are also included on our website. So if you are able to send an email to Marletha directly or to procurement team members directly as well, because our contact information is there.
So Kim, let me just jump in and talk a little bit about the forecast. So when we put our forecast on the website, we will list the contracting officer's contact information, but we'll list the contracting officer's name to the solicitation. Also on our website, we provide you our procurement staff contact information. So we provide real names, real email addresses. So if you should review our acquisition forecast and you see one of our contract specialists or contracting officers name listed, you can also reference the procurement staff contact information and just reach out to them directly to start some engagement. So I want you to know, and we wanted you to know, that when we say we're open for business, we provide all this information out on the board's website for you to reach out to us and stay in touch. Until we get back to what is our new normal with doing vendor outreach, because most of you know the board had a very robust outreach calendar. We participated in most local, national, and regional events so that we can meet people like you, so that you can provide us the goods and services that we need. And not only just with the board, we want you to engage with the reserve banks. Again, within the Federal Reserve System, Again, it's 15 different opportunities, and I can truly tell you that our reserve banks are open for business. And oftentimes, I always tell people you can reach out to a reserve bank, reach out to the supply diversity manager, and you can tell them, Marletha said for me to call you. So we collaborate, we send each other vendors, and so we just want you to know that during these unprecedented times, we are still open for business, and we want to be here with you to provide you with information and resources that you can use. So we do have a few minutes left. I think, Kim, you may have a few more questions.
Yes, that was a great segue to one question I see here. Is there a different procurement acquisition process for the board and the regional banks? Yes, the answer is yes. The regional banks are private commercial entities, and the board is a federal government agency, albeit independent. And so our process is different just from the fact that we are a government agency. Some of our requirements will be more federal government specific. In the IT space, the few that jump to mind, of course, are always FedRAMP, FISMA, 508 compliance, things like that. And while the banks do have some of those requirements, some of them are not as written as stringent as the federal requirements are. Also, the banks do, some of their banks probably use the National Procurement Office of the banks more often than the board does, although we do have that right as well. And the biggest difference is if you have already registered with a bank, their system and our registration system, they do not speak to one another. So you will also have to register specifically in the board's database. I'll just address for a moment, there are a lot of you that want me to confirm if you're in the system, and I will do that. I just wanted to try and get through some of the other questions, so I don't want folks to think that I did not see those requests. Here's a great question. Why is ownership the only certification allowed? The company I work for is run by women and minority individuals. Why does this not count? I may actually need a little more clarification, but the board allows vendors to self-certify. So if you are a woman-owned firm, we allow you to self-certify. You don't have to have a certification through one of the certifying entities like WeBank or anything else. Ownership status is how the Small Business Administration determines what category firms fall into. And so we do follow the same thing. So it's basically the ownership is what's going to trump. What we do also take into account is, as part of Dodd-Frank and OMWI, the Office of Minority and Women Inclusion, is the workforce makeup of any firm. And so that would get to your point that if a firm gets a contract with the board and they are, their workforce is very diverse and they have employed many women and minorities, that actually is a bonus, and it counts towards the diversity of the workforce and the good faith effort that we are seeking all of our contractors to do. So while it does not count for set-asides for business ownership purposes, size category, it does count when our Office of Diversity and Inclusion does their good faith effort audit.
Kim,
and that was a great question.
Kim, can you see the price difference? The price difference in our acquisition policy?
Do you want me to explain that?
Yes.
Yes. So, and again, if folks are looking for some light reading and want to go out to our policy, this is all explained in our policy. But we do have, anytime we have a bidders list that might include large businesses as well as small businesses and large and small businesses together, what we do to help level the playing field is give the small businesses or any covered company, again, and that includes small, minority, women-owned, hub zone. Those are our covered companies, and that's all defined. It gives a price preference by adding a 3% fee, or 3%, I guess I should say. It adds 3% to the large business's price proposal. So thus, because we do recognize many times some of our smaller businesses may have more overhead and things of that nature, and may not be doing volume enough to have reached certain volume discounts and so forth with companies. And this is our way of saying we absolutely are committed to our covered company community and providing fair opportunities and giving an even playing field. And so the large firms are, I hate to say penalized, you know that word was coming right out, so I'll say it anyway. The large firms, we do add 3% to their prices when we're doing that price evaluation. That was a nice reminder there, Marlitha.
Yes, and that is actually pointed out in our solicitation and in our acquisition policy. So for those of you who are inquiring whether or not you're in our database, what we can do, what you can do rather, you can actually go to the vendor database and put in your DUNS number. If it tells you your DUNS number already exists, that means you are currently in our database. So that's one way. So when we get off the webinar, you can just go to the database, put in your DUNS number. If you already exist, you're in our system. So I just wanted to say that. So Kim didn't think she had to sit and search to confirm everybody's in the database. So that's one way of confirming that you are in the database. So we have about 3 minutes left. Any final questions? Danielle, do you have any final comments you would like to make?
Sure. So I do see, and I think this is a great question of how a vendor is able to update and check their registration in the database. For example, like if a point of contact changed or something along those lines.
Oh, so right now we're asking you to send that information to me. As of now, we're unable to allow vendors to, once the registration has been completed, due to security purposes within the Federal Reserve, vendors are unable to go back into the system to update their information. We are looking to, in the future, we're updating our system, as we call it, to next gen, and you will have an opportunity to upload your capability statements and to go in and change your contact information. So for now, if you need to change your contact information, just shoot me a quick email and let me know, and we'll get it changed. But if most of you who are on this call, we actually got your information from our database. So if you're on here, that means you are the contact person within your company. Kim, any final remarks?
I have no, and I'm sorry I didn't go on mute. You could hear me typing. I don't have any final remarks other than, again, I will try to go through and answer these if folks want to sit tight. If I didn't get to your question, I am still going through. Now that Marlitha has offered, I'm still willing to check the information if you're willing to stay on the line, and I will do that. I absolutely thank you all for taking the time out to join us today. We know that time is precious, especially now where we are really all juggling so much at home these days. And we appreciate you taking the time out to learn more about how to win a board contract. I did put Danielle's email in the message, as well as Marlitha's. Again, all of our contact information is on our website. If you want to send me an email afterwards as well, I will reply to them, and I will stay on for a few more moments and go through and answer these questions.
Okay, so just a reminder, we will provide you the slides. I will also send you the acquisitions that Dallas is looking for. I'll also provide you the contact information to our Reserve Bank. So if you want to reach out to the supply diversity managers at the Reserve Bank, the video, we'll all send that to you after this webinar within the next few days. So again, thank you so much for joining us. As we want you to know, we're here for you during these uncertain times. And please reach out to us if we can be of help to you. And stay tuned for the next webinar, as I mentioned, August 25th. And we are going to be meeting the program managers. Again, thank you for joining us, and stay safe. Have a good evening.